Figure collecting, model collecting. At a glance, it all looks the same. One major thing being that models have to be built and painted. Figures are already done. Each has their own draw, benefits, and of course, their own downsides. The price of Robot Spirit's figures, for example, compared to their high-grade model counterparts is particularly obnoxious, especially these days. On the other hand, some high-grade Universal Century models have been around for a while and their articulation and detail leave something to be desired. As I review today's subject, I pose the question of where does the value lie of one over the other, and is the cost worth it? Isn't it funny when the more expensive figure comes in a much smaller box than the models do? I mean, I know the reason for it, but I still think it's a somewhat amusing factor. What's bemusing, though, is the lack of window on the front of the box. That I thought was typical of this figure line, but I guess that changed at some point. I know I ordered this online, so I wasn't going to see it before I got it, but it would have been nice to know if I had a dud before opening the package. So thanks for the lack of forewarning, Damashii Nations. Okay, well, it wasn't a dud, otherwise I might not be doing this review. But it's still one of those things that would have been nice, you know? Anyway, here it is out of the box. No assembly required, more or less. One distinctive thing about this figure to note right away is it's part of the anime subline, which according to the box is an acronym standing for Action, New, Imagine, Memory, Emotion. In essence, this translates to proportions that are meant to emulate the look of what the suit looked like in the show. Or, perhaps more so, an ideal look for the suit reinterpreted for modern standards. Considering the animation style and proportions of 80s anime in this particular context, I find I am not a big fan of this approach. I prefer more modernized remakes for more dynamic lines and angles. This just kind of feels soft and pudgy, you know what I mean? Granted, it's thanks to this anime line that we're getting certain suit designs at all as Robot Spirits, so bleh. Colors comprise of a slightly grayish off-white for most of the body, a somewhat blue-tinged gray for the torso, backpack, and feet, a darker gray for the torso vents, lower midsection, and joints, maroon red for the face vents, cockpit hatch, and other assorted details, a translucent green visor piece with what I can only guess is painted detail underneath, yellow V on the pelvis as well as the shoulder decals, and black on the Vulcans. Pretty much all you need already done. And yet there are still stickers to address. A handful of numerical markings occupy a space with a lot of bullet holes and battle damage and some leaking fluids. I get that the GM Cold District type was seen and remembered primarily for being absolutely trash in the anime, but is anyone really going to use these on the figure itself? I would generally gloss over the articulation, but I feel this figure warrants addressing points one at a time. Lower part of the neck is on a ball joint, allowing a decent degree of wiggle and rotation. Upper neck can hinge down and way up, thanks to the back of the head being cut to accommodate. Hinge in the upper torso, and ball joint at the waist for some good crunching and turning. Side sections of the torso can collapse into the middle, though not really much enough to accomplish anything of significance, to be honest. And I'm not sure, the whole thing kind of feels like it's spring-loaded or something, so it's a teeny bit fickle about getting like that and staying that way. I mean, I appreciate the idea to keep the design looking clean, but it just feels so weak here, especially considering the actual mechanism for the inner shoulder only goes up. Shoulder itself is on a ball joint, so it can go up and down and all around. Swahili. Oh, swivel. I'm trying to figure out what that even means. Swahili, I'm making swivel jokes because it's my job. Single joint at the elbow, which has some deep range thanks to the spring-loaded panel on the forearm, though it feels a bit off from where it should be bending, and not having a double joint is still kind of disappointing. Hands are connected to a ball joint that is oddly on a hinge joint, so it can do this. Maybe this is to make up for the lack of double-jointed elbows, but realistically, the only pose I think this would be useful for is the "oh crap, my wrist is busted, and I just shot myself with my own gun because I fail at life" pose. Front skirts can move up separately, side skirts can lift up a ways, ball-jointed hips move out decently far, I guess. Not much on the swivel front, though. Kicks up pretty good. Really damn good if you get the inner joint to move around and forward. It's a bit tight, though, and I don't really expect to need to use those joints too much. Knees are decently double-jointed, and they have more of these collapsing panels like on the arms. Top part of the ankle can bend forward and out with a ball joint just below that, which can wiggle, but is mostly good for the swifter. These are more swivel jokes that I'm not really catching on to because I wrote this a while ago. Ankle armor is on a single ball joint connection on both legs. Ball joint at the bottom of the ankle to give the foot some good wiggle and pivot, and the toe can bend up. All in all, despite some odd jointing in the upper half, it's still a pretty good posable figure and a good couple of light years over the ancient HDUC kit. But personally, I find it a bit of a step back from the original GM Sniper 2 from 8 years ago, which I find sad when I realize that there's now a Ver Anime GM Sniper 2, and it's based on this particular mold. I mean, to be fair, it's trying to work in a more anime-accurate aesthetic that keeps all the lines of the design intact, whereas the old GM Sniper 2 just kind of exists for the sake of existing, I guess. And again, it's thanks to the Ver Anime line that we got this design at all, so all this, and we still have a few accessories to sift through. A few too many, in fact, I'd say. Let's talk hands. Now, generally, my bare minimum hand necessities are a pair of fists, some holding hands, trigger finger mitts, if needed, and what the heck, some splayed fingers hands. No fists. The default hands that the figure comes with are these sort of closed, kinda grippy hands that can hold the beam saber quite well, in fact. But then we have a set of gripping hands that are meant to hold the saber at a slight angle. Why is this necessary? We also get the trigger finger hands. That's fine. Then we get these semi-relaxed open hands, and then less relaxed, more open hands. What? What does this thing come with 5 sets of hands for? To justify having as many pegs for them on the holding rack part? I mean, I do appreciate the variety, and holding rack is a nice way to keep track of parts, but after seeing some of the stress marks made from removing the hands from this thing, I think I'm just gonna stuff it all in a plastic bag. Back to the saber for a moment. It stores on a little peg on the backpack and fits into the hands, as I've already shown, and comes with a standard beam blade and a dynamic bent beam blade for the all of 0 seconds it was ever shown to use it on screen. Speaking of on-screen oddities, it also comes with 2 different machine guns. A HWF GMG MG79 90mm Bullpup Machine Gun, as seen briefly when the first 2 appeared on screen and later on a downed unit, and we also have the NFHI GMG Type 2 90mm Bullpup Machine Gun that is not really a bullpup at all. It looks more like a Sten or a Sterling. Either gun can be fitted into a trigger finger hand, and if you're lazy, you can have one of the open hands over the Sterling's magazine, which is detachable, by the way, or you can fit it into the left trigger finger hand with a bit of posing finesse. It can double hand it. The stock on the back can be a bit obtrusive to deal with, but I find it more manageable here than on the HDUC kit, which is a bit smaller now that I look at it. Oh, and you can swap out the grenade launcher device on the bottom of the gun barrel. Then, of course, we have the shield, that I think was only ever seen in the anime maybe twice in colored gray both times, but whatever, it's part of the design. It can either be handheld using one of the not fist hands, or clipped into the forearms with this part. I don't like this very much. You also have this part to mount it onto the backpack instead. Not the smoothest of connections, but whatever. Then we have a couple more rear mounting options. One for the Sterling, which pegs into this port that opens on the back skirt. It works, but doesn't really feel secure in a way that feels alright. Then we have this thing, where if you take off this tiny panel from the backpack, you can peg this in and carry the Hyper Bazooka from either the Ver Anime Gundam or Jim around, assuming you own one of these. I mean, interplay between figures is nice, but should this not have been substituted with a mounting rack for the Bullpup instead? Since it's been brought up, I should also like to note that there are various tiny ports capable of mounting various effect parts that come with other figures in the line, such as for boosting or shooting or whatnot, assuming, again, you have other figures from this line that have effects with them. And lastly, a spare antenna in case the other one breaks. So we have a pretty good loadout of parts to work with here. Perhaps too good. I know it seems a bit stupid to complain about loading up a figure with a ton of accessories. It adds variety and play value after all. But the issue I draw with it is that it simultaneously feels like too much and not enough. Not enough because it barely feels like it fills out its price tag of around $50 to $60. And it feels like you're just a bit shortchanged for the price point. Compared to other releases that came before it around the same price point, the combination of accessories and effect parts just feels so weak, like somehow the flat sheet of stickers somehow makes up for the lack of perhaps some booster effects or at least a muzzle flash. At the same time, this particular figure would make for a great army builder, but with its price as high and the accessories as numerous as it is, regardless of its shortcomings, that's a heftier investment than I feel is necessary. It's a good figure, don't get me wrong, but it's in a weird place of limbo between being too awesome for its own good and yet not awesome enough to be mingling with the big boys. Best I can say is it's the only way to get this particular GM variant as an action figure if that's what you want. The least I can say is that it's damn sight better than the old high-grade Universal Century kit in just about every way. But at the same time, the old GMD type is less than $10. And you know what? I'm not even sure this weighs much more than the old kit does. For as loaded up as it is by comparison, I think the old GM Sniper has more heft to it. Jeez. Yeah, if you really must have this, I think it's best that you get it at a hefty discount if you can. I got it at a moderate discount, and I'm still not sure if it was worth it. Well, whatever you value, this has been the Devasia mentality, with a review trying to make a comeback here. RCFS and out.